The entrance to venue 29 was padlocked, not closed, not locked for a private setup. Padlocked with a heavy chain looped through both door handles, and a white paper notice taped to the glass that read, "Vent cancelled by contract haunter." I read those 5 words twice. Then a third time, standing on the courtyard stones in my wedding dress at 11 in the morning, while the October wind off Lake Ontario came in cold enough to remind me it could do whatever it wanted. 180 of my guests were already on their way. My name is Darcy. I'm 29 years old, a licensed CPA and forensic accountant based in Toronto. I grew up in Brampton, working class, hardworking, predominantly immigrant community on the western edge of the city, where my mother spent 15 years as a hospital laundry worker and my aunt ran a catering business out of her kitchen because that was how you built something when nobody was holding the door open for you. I'm the first person in my family to own a firm. I built it without a parental loan, without a private school network, without anyone's name making the phone calls before I arrived. I say all of this because nothing that happened next makes any sense without it. My future mother-in-law, Loretta, had presented herself to the venue on Tuesday with a limited power of attorney document and a pleasant, authoritative smile. She had signed the cancellation form. She had withdrawn my $22,000 deposit, money I had paid from my business account in April, and had the funds transferred out the same afternoon. She had not told me. She had instructed the venue not to contact me, explaining that the event logistics were being managed by the family. The venue's events coordinator was standing inside the glass door, looking like she wished she had called in sick this week. "I'm so sorry, Ms. Darcy," she said quietly. "Your future mother-in-law was very clear in her instructions. The event has been relocated to the Crestwood Club. She mentioned the new guest list has been adjusted to 40 people, close family, and some colleagues of your fiancé." She hesitated. "She said you were aware of the change." I was not aware of the change. My phone buzzed. It was my best friend Josephine, 2 blocks away in the lead coach bus, one of 4 buses carrying my aunts and cousins and childhood friends and my mother and my godmother, people who had taken time off work and booked flights from Halifax and Edmonton and driven up from Hamilton specifically to be in that room with us tonight. Her text read, "Traffic finally moving, 7 minutes, everything okay?" I didn't reply. I stood there and did what I always do when I'm staring at a balance sheet that doesn't add up. I breathed carefully and I thought instead of reacted. Let me tell you about Loretta. She is the kind of woman who has never once in her adult life had to think of money as a practical, daily object, because she married into a family that had accumulated enough of it in Ontario commercial real estate to stop thinking about it 2 generations ago. She lives in Rosedale. Her husband Winston's family name is on a wing of a private school in North Toronto. She is a founding member of the Crestwood Club and mentions her membership the way people mention their dentist, casually and often. From the first dinner she invited me to, she treated my presence in her son's life with the particular warmth you'd extend to a houseplant that had bloomed unexpectedly. She complimented my work ethic. She called Brampton a vibrant area in a tone that drained the word of every positive thing it could have meant. She asked once, over wine, whether my mother had always worked in service roles, and smiled pleasantly while she asked it. Miles had begged me to add Loretta's name to the venue contract as a secondary contact. His mother was traditional, he said. It would make her feel included, it was just a formality to keep the peace. He was wrong about that. I called him. He answered on the second ring. There was quiet music behind him, the kind of ambient jazz that plays in rooms where the wine list doesn't have prices printed. He was already at the Crestwood Club. "Miles," I said, "I'm standing outside a padlocked door. My deposit is gone. I need you to explain to me what's happened." There was a pause, not the pause of a man who has been caught off guard. The pause of a man who has been bracing for a specific phone call and is now deciding how to begin his prepared remarks. "Darcy," he started, "I need you to hear me out before you react." "I'm not reacting," I said. "I'm asking you a question." He exhaled slowly. "Mum and I had a conversation last week. Venue 29 is a fine space, but it's massive and frankly a bit corporate, not really the atmosphere that reflects what tonight should be. The Crestwood is one of the most prestigious private clubs in the city. She pulled strings to get a last-minute booking. It's beautiful. It's exactly the kind of evening that reflects where we actually are right now." "Where we actually are," I repeated. "Professionally, where we're headed." "Miles, 180 people are on their way here right now. My mother is on a bus 2 blocks from where I'm standing. My aunt flew in from Halifax on Thursday. What exactly is your plan for them? A silence opened up that I recognized. I had heard smaller versions of it before, every time my family came up before events where Miles was uncertain about how they'd land. The new venue holds 40, he said, quieter now. Senior partners from the firm are there tonight. Aldous is there. This is the group that decides my partnership next quarter. A very large, loud gathering at a private club isn't the impression I need to make right now. Having people from, he stopped himself. Having that kind of crowd there isn't what tonight needs to be. From where, Miles? I said. Finish the sentence. He didn't. Your mother took $22,000 from a contract that was in my name, I said. Did you know about this before today? She managed the relocation. Miles, she took my money without telling me and moved my wedding reception into a venue she chose, to a guest list she decided on, because she wanted to cut my family out. Yes or no, did you know? Darcy. His voice shifted into the register he used when he thought I was being irrational. Measured, slightly elevated, the tone of a man explaining something to someone he's already decided won't understand it properly. Nobody took anything. She redirected the funds for a better outcome. You're making this into a crisis. I looked at my reflection in the dark glass of the door. The woman looking back at me was wearing a dress she had spent 4 months saving for, standing in a locked-out parking lot, listening to her future husband tell her that the disappearance of her money was a logistics issue. I told Miles I would see him very soon and ended the call. A silver Audi pulled into the lot 30 seconds later. Out stepped Gareth, Miles's brother-in-law, married to his younger sister Cressida, manager of a private investment fund based on King Street. Gareth was the kind of man who believed his tailor and his postal code communicated everything necessary about him. From the first family dinner I attended, he had made it politely but unmistakably clear that he considered my presence in the family to be something between a curiosity and a problem that someone hadn't gotten around to resolving. He walked toward me with his hands in his coat pockets, completely unhurried. Loretta asked me to come, he said, looking at my dress with the carefully managed neutrality of someone suppressing amusement. She thought you might need someone to walk you through the situation calmly. The situation, I said. The relocation. He reached into his inside pocket and produced a check. He set it on the bonnet of my car. $5,000. That covers your vendor cancellation penalties and then some. Take it. Tell the buses to turn around. Go have a nice dinner somewhere downtown. This doesn't need to become a scene. I looked at the check. $5,000. For $22,000 taken. For 180 people who had rearranged their Saturdays and their budgets and their flights to be in that room tonight. For 2 years of Sunday dinners in Rosedale where I had sat across from this man and smiled through every comment he made about where I came from. I picked up the check, tore it in half, then in quarters. I let the pieces fall on the cobblestone between his shoes. Gareth's expression changed. That's a mistake, he said. Start the buses, I said to Josephine, who had appeared at my shoulder. We're going to the Crestwood Club. Gareth stepped forward. That's a private venue with security staff. You walk in with an uninvited group and Loretta will call the police. Is that what you want? I expect she might, I said, and I got in the car. The Crestwood Club sits at the end of a private drive in the annex, behind iron fencing and old oak trees, the kind of building that has been hosting a certain kind of Toronto life since 1907 and has never once felt the need to put its name on a sign. My buses pulled up to the front entrance at 12:14. I stepped out first. My family followed, 180 people in jewel tones and tailored suits and polished heels, laughing and adjusting each other's lapels, looking exactly like what they were. People who had dressed with intention for a celebration that mattered to them. The valet staff on the front steps clearly had no procedure in their training manual for 4 coach buses arriving simultaneously, and it showed. I walked through the front doors. Inside, the room had been arranged for 40. White tablecloths, candlelight, a string quartet playing Vivaldi in the far corner. 40 people in expensive blazers holding pre-dinner drinks, murmuring in the particular low register of people who have never once in their lives had to be loud to get what they want. When the doors opened and my family walked in behind me, the string quartet stopped on an unresolved chord. The room went completely still. Loretta was at the far end of the room. Cream wool blazer, pearls, always the pearls. The champagne flute in her hand trembled just slightly before she set it down and moved toward me with the controlled speed of a woman who has performed composure for several decades and is very good at it. She took my wrist, lightly, the grip that reads as affection from 20 feet away. "What are you doing?" Her voice was soft, measured, pitched exactly loud enough for the nearest two tables to hear. "This is a private event, Darcy. Miles's managing partner is in this room. The people deciding his future are in this room right now. You walking in here with Olive." She glanced past me. "This is not what tonight needs to be." "Let go of my wrist," I said. She released it. She stepped closer. "I did this for you," she said, and her voice had moved into something almost grief-stricken, the tone of a woman who had made a difficult sacrifice and wasn't being properly appreciated for it. "I knew you wouldn't see it clearly in the moment. The Crestwood gives you a dignified, elegant evening. Not a chaotic crowd from." She stopped. "I was protecting you. From my own family," I said. "From this," she gestured briefly at the people behind me. I had prepared myself for this exact speech on the drive over. I had decided very deliberately not to shout, not to perform, not to give her the scene she was quietly engineering. I dealt in documentation and evidence. The facts would do the work. All I had to do was stay level. But then Miles arrived. He crossed the room toward us, and for one unguarded, honest moment I thought he was coming to stand beside me. He didn't. He grabbed my elbow, steered me 2 steps to the side, and said through his teeth, "Darcy, Aldous is standing at the bar watching this happen right now. You need to get everyone back on the buses before this gets worse." "Your mother canceled our reception," I said. "She took $22,000 and you didn't call me." "She was managing." "She took my money, Miles. I was trying to handle it before you." "Before I what?" He looked past me at my aunts standing near the entrance in their good coats, and I saw it happen. The thing he'd been hiding for 2 years, the expression that surfaced whenever my world and his were occupying the same room at the same time. "Can you just," he said quietly with his jaw set, "for one night, act like you belong in a room like this instead of—" He stopped himself. But the pause said everything the sentence didn't. Josephine, standing 3 feet behind me, made a very small sound. I looked at Miles, the man whose Law Society of Ontario licensing fees I had quietly covered after his first failed assessment, whose second attempt I had funded, whose job application to Aldous's firm I had personally vouched for, calling in professional credibility I had spent a decade earning, because he had come to my apartment after his results arrived and cried and told me his mother would consider him a failure if he ended up at legal aid. The man who had eaten at my mother's kitchen table in Brampton every Christmas for 3 years and let her fuss over him and love him the way she loved everyone who came through her door. Standing here in front of the people whose opinions he feared most, he couldn't say the word Brampton out loud. "I'll deal with this myself," I said. I turned to face the room. "Excuse me," I said, at a volume that carried across the dining room without effort. The conversations nearest to me died. Then the ones beyond them. "My name is Darcy. Miles and I were married this morning. I found Aldous near the bar. He was watching me with the composed, unreadable expression of a man in the business of evaluating people. I understand several of you are Miles's colleagues from the firm. I want to address something tonight that I think has direct professional relevance." Miles said my name. I kept going. "Miles failed his Law Society of Ontario licensing assessments twice," I said. "He came to me both times. I used professional relationships I had spent 10 years building on Bay Street to advocate for his application to your firm, Aldous. I vouched for him personally. He did not accurately disclose the number of assessment attempts on his application. I wasn't aware he had done that until recently." The room was very quiet. Aldous looked at Miles, just looked at him, the look of a senior partner revising an opinion in real time. "Is that accurate?" Aldous said. Miles looked at his mother. The word mum came out of him like something structural giving way. Before Loretta could regroup, Gareth moved toward the entrance with his phone already in his hand. "This woman has walked into a private event with an uninvited group, and she is harassing the guests," he announced loudly to the room in general. "I'm calling the police." He called, and several people in the room who wanted to believe him leaned into it because it required less of them than the alternative. My family did not move. My mother stood beside me in her good coat, still holding her clutch, shoulders back. My cousin stood with his arms at his sides, jaw set, completely still. Josephine kept her hand on my shoulder. None of us raised our voices, none of us needed to. We watched Gareth perform distress for the 911 dispatcher in the specific language people like him reach for when they want a particular outcome without saying plainly what that outcome is. The police arrived 11 minutes later, a sergeant and 2 constables. Gareth crossed to them immediately. That woman brought an uninvited group into a private event. They're refusing to leave. I need them removed right now. The sergeant looked at him. Then she looked around the room, at 180 formally dressed people standing in composed, complete silence, and 40 people holding champagne glasses with the expressions of people watching something they hadn't anticipated. She looked at the string quartet instruments in the corner. She looked at the white tablecloths. Then she looked at me. And then she looked at me again, differently. "Mrs. Darcy," she said, not a question. Loretta made a sound I hadn't heard from her before. "Yes," I said. "I thought that was you," a brief professional nod. "I was at the CCA status hearing in February. You were presenting for the monitoring firm." Winston said, from somewhere behind Loretta, "What?" I opened my clutch and removed the document I had printed Thursday evening, certified copy, court-stamped, my firm's name listed as monitor. 8 months ago, the Crestwood Club had quietly filed for creditor protection under the company's Creditors Arrangement Act, rather than inform its membership that it was insolvent. My firm had been appointed by the Ontario Superior Court of Justice as monitor, the court's representative with supervisory authority over the club's operations and premises during the restructuring proceedings. I held the document up, then I turned it so the room could see it. "I don't need a membership," I said. "Under the active CCA proceedings currently before the court, my firm holds monitorship authority over this property." Loretta's booking this week was not authorized through the monitor. She used a credit line that no longer belongs to the club's operating account. She booked this room without my authorization. I looked at her directly, which means her event is the one that's unsanctioned. My family and I are here lawfully. She is not. Loretta had gone the particular shade of pale that comes from being out-prepared by someone you underestimated. Winston said that is not possible. He said it the way men of his generation say things they already suspect might be true. "The court file number is at the top of the document," I said. "It's public record, you can verify it Monday morning." Loretta looked at me with an expression that moved through several things before settling on something very close to hatred. "You planned this," she said. Her voice was shaking at its edges. "You staged all of this to destroy us." "You canceled my reception venue," I said. "You took $22,000 from my deposit account using a limited power of attorney that was issued for a single specific transaction. You moved my wedding into a building where you have no authority to hold an event, and you did it to control who got to be in the room when I got married." I let a beat of silence pass. "I didn't plan anything, Loretta. You did." "That money," she stopped. The sergeant said quite calmly, "What money?" Loretta looked at me. She looked at the sergeant. She looked at the room, at the 40 guests who were her people, who she had curated, whose opinion she had been managing for 58 years. And then she made the mistake that ended everything. She had been navigating these waters too long, and the silence required something, and she was too accustomed to being the smartest person in the room to recognize when she wasn't. "The venue deposit," she said, her voice taking on the tone of someone presenting context rather than making a confession. "I transferred it, a portion to cover the Crestwood booking, and an additional amount to address a short-term cash flow issue within the family. I had signing authority over the account, and I was managing it in the family's interest." "Whose cash flow issue?" the sergeant said. Loretta's mouth opened, closed. "Gareth's investment fund has been under review by the Ontario Securities Commission for 3 months, I said, turning to the sergeant. 3 of his fund's investors are clients of firms I've done restructuring work for. The review involves allegations of commingling. Investor capital moved into personal accounts during a period of significant fund losses. He needed liquid capital to address margin calls before the review advanced." I looked at Gareth, who was standing very still near the entrance with his phone at his side and an expression I had never seen on him before. "Loretta used my deposit, $22,000 from my business account, to help cover it. Not all of it went to the club booking." The room was absolutely silent. Gareth said, "I want my lawyer." Loretta said, "Don't, it wasn't directed at me." And then, because she had never in her life lost a room and didn't know how to stop trying to win one she had already lost, she said what she should not have said. "I bridged a temporary gap," she said loudly, to the sergeant, to the room, to anyone who might still be persuaded. Gareth needed short-term liquidity and I had signing authority over an account that had sitting funds, and I used that authority to protect my family. Using my money, I said quietly, without my knowledge, to conceal an active securities violation. The sergeant looked at Loretta for a long moment, then she looked at Gareth. "I'm going to need both of you to come with me," she said. I had called a contact from the financial desk at the Globe an hour before arriving here. A journalist I knew from a Bay Street restructuring file, who I had told to come to the Crestwood Club if she wanted the story behind the OSC's quiet investigation into a private investment fund. She arrived while Gareth was refusing to stand down and the sergeant's constables were moving to flank the entrance. She was one reporter with a recorder and a photographer, but in Toronto's financial community, that is more than sufficient. Loretta tried to cover her face. The cameras didn't care. Winston had stopped speaking entirely. He stood near the back of the room with one hand over his mouth, looking at the floor, a man calculating the cost of something that had already been spent. And then Miles found me. He had been standing near the bar through most of it, perfectly still, watching his career and his family and his carefully constructed image come apart in sequence. He looked the way people look when they suddenly understand the actual value of something they have already thrown away. He crossed to me, he reached for my left hand. "Darcy," he said, "please, we can go somewhere and talk. Tell them to stop. You've proved your point, please, just make it stop." I looked at the ring. I had worn it for 2 years. I had never once taken it off in the pool, in the lake, in all the winter mornings I swam before work because that was how I started my day. I took it off. I set it on the white tablecloth of the nearest empty place setting, gently, the way you set down something you're done carrying. "I'm not stopping anything, Miles," I said. "Your mother made choices. Gareth made choices. You made choices, including the one tonight where you stood in your own wedding and told me to act like I belong in a room like this, as though where I come from is something I should be working to put behind me." I looked at him. "I built my career from Brampton. I didn't overcome it. It's the reason I'm good at what I do." I turned around. My family was right there, all of them, exactly where they always were when it mattered. My mother with her chin up, Josephine with her hand already extended. My aunts and cousins and godmother and childhood friends who had stood in this room for 40 minutes without raising their voices once, with more grace and dignity than anyone in this building had any right to ask of them. "Let's go," I said. We went to Josephine's sister's event space in Kensington Market. Someone cleared the tables and connected a speaker and called ahead to a Jamaican catering place they knew. By 7 o'clock, the room was full of food, full of music, full of people who had known me since before I had a business card or a Bay Street client list. My mother danced with my godmother. My godmother cried through her toast, which was long and embarrassing and absolutely perfect. Somebody's little cousin fell asleep under a table near the end of the night, and nobody moved him because he looked comfortable and the party was still going. It was the best evening of my life. That was 14 months ago. Gareth pleaded guilty to 3 counts of commingling investor funds. He is awaiting sentencing. Cressida filed for divorce when the offshore accounts were frozen. Winston has become quietly absent from Ontario commercial real estate circles, which for a man like him is a form of disappearing. Loretta was charged with misappropriation of funds and fraudulent use of power of attorney. The restitution agreement required her to liquidate the Muskoka property. The Crestwood Club's new board, once the CCAA restructuring concluded and the club emerged under new ownership, declined to renew her membership. She has since resigned from 2 charitable boards before those boards could ask her to. She is no longer someone whose name means what it used to mean in this city. Miles was let go from the firm the following Monday. He found an associate position at a small family law practice. He called me once, 8 months later, at 8 in the morning on a Wednesday. I was on my way into a creditor meeting. I let it go to voicemail. I still haven't listened to it. My firm closed 2 new monitorship appointments in the following quarter and had its strongest revenue year since I opened the doors. I think about that October morning sometimes, standing outside a padlocked door in a dress I loved, reading a cancellation notice, breathing carefully in the cold. I think about the version of me that almost turned around and sent the buses home. That almost decided a seat at their table was worth the price they were charging for it. But here is what 14 months and a fair amount of quiet have taught me. The people who spent so long deciding who belonged where had completely stopped paying attention to who was actually buying the building. That was their problem, it was never mine. If this story resonated with you, if you've ever had someone underestimate you and lived to regret exactly that, I want to hear about it in the comments. Subscribe to Jumpy Revenge for more stories about knowing your worth, holding your ground, and never letting anyone else write the ending of your own story.